Hello there, a very good morning from the capital, Jakarta, Indonesia. Live on TVR World, we come to you with a special report. For the next 30 minutes, we'll bring you the latest outcomes of the much anticipated summit between the two top leaders of the global world. The U.S. President Donald Trump is set to meet, has met actually, in a summit in Alaska with Russian counterpart, the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. The meeting has just concluded a few hours back, and it has been conveyed to the media and to the world that no significant deal, or rather no deal at all, has been reached between the two when it comes to ceasefire for the war in Ukraine, something that the U.S. has been trying to push for a while now, at least during the presidency of Donald Trump. So we'll bring you the latest from Anchorage, Alaska, where the summit just took place, and we'll bring you more reports on things that preceded the summit and conversation here in the studio. In the meantime, we have a first report coming in. U.S. President Donald Trump greeted Russian President Vladimir Putin with a handshake ahead of a high-stakes summit in Alaska on Friday that could determine whether a ceasefire can be reached in the deadliest war in Europe since World War II.
Trump disembarked his plane, Air Force One, and awaited Putin on the tarmac. The two exchanged greetings while smiling. U.S. F-22 aircraft were placed on either side of the red carpet. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was not invited to the talks, and his European allies feared Trump might sell out Ukraine by essentially freezing the conflict with Russia. Trump hopes a truce in the 3.5-year-old war will bring peace to the region. For Putin, the summit is already a big win that he can portray as evidence that years of Western attempts to isolate Russia have unraveled, and that Moscow is retaking its rightful place at the top table of international diplomacy.
Right, there you have it. U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin met on Friday at Joint Base Elmdorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska, for the first summit since 2021, holding nearly 3 hours of narrow format talks focused on the potential Ukraine ceasefire to end the deadliest war in Europe since World War II. Well, the U.S. President Donald Trump said he did not know what would make his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin a success, saying he wanted to see a ceasefire and asked what would make the meeting a success. This is what he told reporters about that particular questions on Air Force One. Take a look.
Success of this summit today? I can't tell you that. I don't know. It's there's nothing set in stone. I want certain things. I want to see a ceasefire. This is not to do with Europe. Europe's not telling me what to do. But they're going to be involved in the process, obviously, as will Zelensky. But I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. Everyone said it can't be today, but I'm just saying I want the killing to stop. I'm in this to stop the killing. You know, we're not putting up any money. We're making money. They're buying our weapons, and we're sending them to NATO, and NATO's sending us big, beautiful checks. But that I don't care about that. I care about, it was a big factor when Biden spent $350 billion and got nothing. But what I do care about is they lost last week, 7,011 people were lost, almost all soldiers. 36 people in a town which got hit by a missile. But over 7,000 soldiers.
Well, there has been some skepticism in Anchorage, Alaska, where locals and tourists said on Friday that the summit between the U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin likely will not bring an end to the Ukraine war.
Trump said he wanted to see a ceasefire today as he headed to Alaska for the summit with Putin to help end the deadliest war in Europe since World War II.
I don't think it'll have any, it won't do anything whatsoever unless Trump decides, he's going to give Alaska back to, Russia or something. It just, I have no expectations whatsoever unless Ukraine can come up with a big bribe for Trump or Trump family. I've got no expectations whatsoever. It's just a show. It's just more raw sewage that Trump feeds everybody to block out the rest of the stuff that's actually happening.
We won't be following very closely. We're going to be traveling to Homer and taking in the views, and then we're spending the weekend fishing and with grandkids. So we'll check the highlights at the end of the weekend.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was not invited to the talks, and his European allies fear Trump might sell out Ukraine by essentially freezing the conflict and recognizing, if only formally, Russian control over 1/5 of Ukraine. Trump sought to assuage such concerns as he boarded Air Force One, saying he would let Ukraine decide on any possible territorial swaps.
Now, let's go to the next report now. Pro-Ukraine protesters gathered in Anchorage, Alaska on Friday as Trump and Putin met face-to-face at a high-stakes summit that could determine whether a ceasefire can be reached in the deadliest war in Europe since World War II.
Ahead of the talks, Trump greeted the Russian leader on a red carpet on the tarmac at a U.S. Air Force base. The two shook hands warmly and touched each other on the arm before riding in Trump's limo to the summit site nearby. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was not invited to the talks, and his European allies feared Trump might sell out Ukraine by essentially freezing the conflict with Russia and recognizing, if only informally, Russian control over 1/5 of Ukraine. Trump hopes a truce in the 3.5-year-old war that Putin started will bring peace to the region, as well as bolster his credentials as a global peacemaker worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize.
All right, here on a special report, let's bring in our expert to deep dive into this very important topics from Anchorage, Alaska. Joining me for the conversations here in the studio is nuclear engineer, who's also a U.S. and global politics observer, Didin Nasiruddin. Pak Didin, always a pleasure to have you here on TVR World. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good morning.
Right. I said this at the beginning of our program, and I say it again. It's been conveyed to the public that the summit that lasted for a little over 3 hours in Anchorage, Alaska, has come with no significant deal pertaining to the ceasefire in Ukraine. So it's not going to stop anytime soon after this summit. However, there are many other small things coming after this summit. At this point, give us your take on the very important outcome of the Alaska summit.
Okay, so basically the U.S. did not set really a high expectation from the summit. Because they know that without Ukraine's involvement, then it's difficult to reach a deal, because it's not between U.S. and Russia, but it is between Ukraine and Russia, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually the Trump's team expectation from the summit. So they expect that the summit will follow by the second one, where Ukraine and Russia will meet. And from there will be a real deal to achieve the ceasefire.
All right. So what's next is the fact that Putin and Zelensky will be meeting. We don't know yet. We don't know when. But what can we expect from this Ukraine-Russia meeting? It's been put on the table for a while. It's been postponed. Nothing has really significant has come out of it. Their high-ranking officials have also met before in different parts of the world.
Yeah, actually, the card is in Putin because if we see on the field that Russia is continuous, it's capturing the Ukraine territory, and then it had already captured like 90% of Ukraine territory, and then so that's Russia, and then even the Ukraine intelligence also said that Russia has been preparing for the war until next year, meaning that it really does not really want to have a deal with Ukraine for now.
All right, so that's that statement going into 2026. It means it's going to be 4-year-long protracted war of Russia and Ukraine. But what's also important is that the summit was 3 hours between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. But the press conference, Padidin, was mere minutes. Nothing significant was divulged to the public. Not that they're proud of it, but Trump said it was a 10 out of 10 meeting, if I can give it a score. I don't know if it's out of 10, maybe out of 100, but there is no deal. And the press conference seemed quite lackluster.
Yeah, because the target is not to really reach a deal. They're realistic about that. They just want to.
So the meeting was not to get a deal.
No.
What was that for, in your opinion?
Because both sides, especially Trump sides, who is the most enthusiastic party in the summit, he wants to impress the U.S. voters that he really wants to fulfill his promise of ending the Ukraine-Russian war. Not day one, absolutely, but at least he tries to end the war. Yeah.
Which is something that is not achieved in this particular meeting.
Because polls shows that Trump is quite bad in the foreign policy, especially in the Russia and Ukraine war element. Yeah, because
But 3 hours for two heads of state to meet, and some of the biggest economies in this world, U.S. and Russia, together in a room for 3 hours, Pak Didin. This must be quite some substantial discussion and probably debates and exchange of words in between the two leaders. What do you think exactly happened in those hours of negotiations, something that Trump probably put on the table for Russia to consider, but it was totally rebuked by President Putin? They just could not meet eye to eye or find common ground.
There's no info yet about what being discussed in the meeting.
Yeah, of course, it's behind closed door. It's confidential.
But what I see that Putin is still insistent on his position, meaning that he wants, one of the conditions of the war is that first Ukraine should drop his intention to join NATO. That's the first condition.
Okay. That is the biggest scare for Russia right now.
Full independence from Russia, meaning Russia still see Ukraine as part of the former Soviet Union. It should ally with them in the future. So that's the expectation from this dramatically.
Because they need Ukraine on their side at this point for the Russians, right? But that is exactly what Trump has said during the press conference. The few minutes of the things that I said to the public was that right after this, I'm going to make a call to Zelensky, and I'm going to call NATO leaders. But I don't know what he meant by that. What do you think he meant by that?
Yeah, at least for NATO sides, they're happy because at least from the meeting, they saw no concession given by Trump. Trump did not give in to Putin from the meeting. I think that's a good thing for Russia, for European side. And for Zelensky, maybe he wants to push for the second summit where they will be involved and talk directly with Russia, where the real deal could be made.
Yeah, that is also a big question there, Pak Didin, because there's a lot of questions up in the air regarding this summits. The war is in Ukraine, but it doesn't involve Ukraine in whatever role for this Alaska summit. A lot of Ukrainian people has gone down to the U.S. Embassy over in Kyiv saying that we need to be a part of the Alaska summit, call our president in, but it's not happening. It's just between Donald Trump and President Putin. Why do you think that is? Should Ukraine have been involved in the Alaska meeting from the get-go?
Yeah, because that's not the target for the first summit. Because as I said before, that Trump's main intention is to show to the public that
done something.
He'll do something to end the war. So that's maybe his expectation is to increase his favorability in the poll. Maybe that's the first target, and then
that is always his goal,
yes,
right?
That's right?
To increase the political favorability. And he said during his campaign, I said it again, that should he be president of the U.S., he'll resolve the Ukraine war in 24 hours. And apparently that's not what happened right now.
Not only Russia, but also in Gaza, right? Until now it's getting worse.
Even the historic summit in Alaska didn't get a deal on. All right, we are out of time, but give us your analysis for the future of this ordeal, Pak Didin. What's next for Russia, Ukraine, with U.S. chipping in?
Yeah, I believe that the second summit will happen where Russia and Ukraine will directly meet. But I believe that no concession will be achieved, a fair concession, meaning that Trump maybe will do everything to make the war end, even by giving Russia more concession. For example, by not requiring Russia to give back the territory that he captured from Ukraine. Maybe that's the end of solution.
We'll take another break now. We'll return with more right here on Special Report. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to Special Reports here on TVR World. We are still bringing you the latest from Anchorage, Alaska, post the U.S.-Russia summit that just concluded a few hours back, with no significant deals has been reached pertaining to the ceasefire and the stop of war in Ukraine. In the meantime, I'm still joined by nuclear engineer, U.S. and global politics observer, Bapak Didin Nasiruddin. I've said my thanks to you before now, and thank you again for joining me for the second part of our program, Pak Didin. There's still a lot of questions in the air. We talked about this during our break, was that why Alaska? Why does it matter for the presence of Russian presidents in the U.S. land? Because if we look back in a retrospect in history, there's only been a couple of times when presidents of these two nations, U.S. and Russia, have met, and this is one in history.
Okay, maybe first it's because in the past, Alaska was part of Russia. Yeah. And they sold it to the U.S. And
Alaska was once a part of Russia.
That's
Not
right.
a lot of people know that.
Yeah, the Tsar sold it to U.S. in 1860s. Yeah, and very cheap. Oh, okay. I forgot the numbers.
Or was it
it's very close to Russia, right? And so with many Russian communities there. And if you remember, one of Alaska's two senators, Lisa Murkowski, was their parents are from Russia, right? So that for Putin is very much like a neutral area. Similar to, if you remember John Wick, the
hotel.
The hotel.
Okay. Yeah.
The Continental Hotel.
The Continental Hotel. Well, I don't know you're a fan of that.
He will feel safe there.
That's a neutral
area.
It's not even Switzerland or something. It's Alaska.
Yeah, Alaska, because but Russia is very close to Russian territories, and then many Russian communities there, and so Putin will feel safe to have a summit with Russia with Trump.
Right, but there's a lot of voice out there saying disappointment to the fact that there is no deal to end the war. A lot of people have the expectations for the war at least to end, agreed by these two leaders. However, during the press conference, it's been divulged by President Putin, who speak very little to the media, saying that even though there's no deal around the Ukraine war, but he would like to explore more avenues and opportunities for investments, trade, digital technologies, high technologies, and energy. What's your take on this, Badidin?
Yeah, as you know that
it's like it's okay to go to war, but we can cooperate on other things.
Yeah, as you know that during the Biden presidency, the U.S. joined Europe and also urged other countries to boycott Russia because of the war, right?
Yeah, but there's no deal on sanctions either. I mean, it should have been said, like, if they keep doing the war, we will sanction them even harsher. But that's not even what came out of this Alaska summit.
Yeah, because of, as I said to you, that because there's no real targets from the summit.
So it was just a cordial, hospitable meeting between the two of them.
That's one thing, and
leading to Zelensky
and to
Putin.
give impression to the U.S. voters and the Russian people that the war will end someday. Because as you know that the Russian economy also suffer from because of the war. If we see the data that in 2021, the Russian economy grows almost 5%.
Okay.
This year, the IMF predicted only 1%.
Ooh,
next
that is
year,
contracted massively.
Yeah, next year maybe could be negative. So that by having the summit, then Putin told the Russian people that we will end the war and improve the Russian economy. I think that's.
But I've spoken to many Russian representatives, the ambassadors, Russian counterparts, and they've been always saying that we are very confident with our economy. We have a robust economy, very sustainable, and the fact that a lot of these countries are still importing things from Russia. India, for example, is still importing Russia's oil, and they have been stung by an additional 25% tariff by President Trump. So that's something that China would like to maneuver around, because they are still also heavily importing oil from Russia. And there is the absence of Xi Jinping there in Alaska, where a lot of people said that the fact that there is no deal between Russia and the U.S. pertaining to the war could really exacerbate and jeopardize the positions of China, which is already going through an economic slowdown.
Yeah, there's always a back door for trade, right? Yeah. I think it happens from time to time. But free trade is always the best business, right? Because the price will be better and then the volume will be higher because of the transparency. So, and also because regardless what the Russian diplomats said, but facts tells a different story, right? Yeah. Like maybe Russia internally said that our economic growth 4%, 5%, but the independence agency like IMF or the World Bank show different figures. So
right. And how do you think NATO will respond to this outcome of the Alaska summit and the fact that Zelensky and Putin will be meeting soon? We don't know when. And will they even agree to be meeting and discuss the end to the war?
Yeah, NATO will see what's the outcomes of the second summit, right? Because first they intend to have Ukraine join NATO, but Russia insists that no, they will not join NATO. And then whether after the summit Russia will drop its intention to be more expansionist. So because I honestly believe that Putin's invading Ukraine is its dream to like rebuild the Soviet Union.
Okay.
So after
going back to the past.
That's right. So after Ukraine, whether after the ceasefire, whether Putin will stop trying to invade other European countries, especially the former Soviet Union nations. Maybe that's what NATO would see after the second summit,
right,
if it happens.
Right. Well, looking at the things that has unfolded in Anchorage, Pak Didin, how will it affect Indonesia in any way? How does it concern us?
Yeah, I think if the ceasefire ends, then Russia will not be a factor for Trump tariff.
Okay.
and also the trade between the two nations, and not only between Indonesia and Russia, but between Indonesia and Ukraine and Europe, maybe will flourish again. Okay. Because you see that war will prevent, like Russia. Russia, maybe most of their spending are not for military, right? Okay. Likewise, Ukraine, and also Europe spend a significant amount of their money for military equipment to support Ukraine. But if it ends, then we'll get back to business.
All right. Well, war is an industry to some people out there, right?
But not for Indonesia, right?
Definitely not for us. So, well, with that, we have to conclude our conversations and the program. Again, I have to thank you, nuclear engineer, U.S. and global politics observer, Didin Nasiruddin Pandin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
again
much
for being here.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes special reports here on TV Our World on the latest developments from Anchorage, Alaska. I'm Rahmat Idris from Jakarta, Indonesia. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.